Our identification of global development with poverty alleviation is a golden cage that keeps the rich rich and the poor poor. Yes, we need to address poverty, but to do so, we need to examine the core values of our own culture and the deep-seated beliefs that motivate our actions. And the best way to do this is in dialogue with other cultures and other ways of understanding the world. Katerina Paba is a weaver on the island of Flores. In the 1990s, she had a series of dreams in which her ancestors told her to make a particular ceremonial textile. This textile had a beaded ancestral ship on a blue field of elephants and is used for the ceremonies to inaugurate a clan house or an ancestral shrine. She made this textile, and soon thereafter, she fell quite seriously ill. And for 3 years, she visited doctors and healers seeking a cure. Eventually, she went to a medium who said to her, "You made this textile. The ancestors want it back." She knew what that meant, and her clan had to perform a ceremony to take the textile that she had made and install it amongst the sacred artifacts in the clan house so that it could be used in the future for traditional ceremonies. In the years thereafter, she made her living selling textiles like this. She made them and sold them to collectors and dealers and tourists that were passing through the island of Flores. This is how I came to meet her. In recent times, however, the local economy has grown stronger. Other clans have been rebuilding their clan houses, and they're in need of these kind of textile to complete their ceremonies. Local demand has pushed the price up higher than the international market will bear. So we have a wonderful economically and culturally sustainable solution to continuing a tradition. Technically, Katerina's textiles are not the best you'll find in Indonesia or anywhere. What makes them valuable is the meanings associated with how they were made and the meanings associated with how they're used. For 15 years, I've worked with weavers like Katerina all across Indonesia. And what I found is the key to successful and sustainable development is working with traditional culture and engaging with the values that are expressed through traditional culture. Standard development practice doesn't do this. Standard development doesn't engage with intangible culture. And by intangible culture, I mean the values, the knowledge, the meanings, the aspirations that are expressed through the arts and crafts, through dance, music, and drama, through architecture, through the way a society expresses itself. I am the co-founder of a fair trade business that sells traditional textiles, and the co-director of a non-profit that works with traditional weavers all across Indonesia. We're based here in Bali, but we work with over 1,000 weavers on 11 islands. What these weavers have in common is they all make high-quality, natural-dyed, traditional textiles to a standard seen elsewhere only in museums. The values that they share, they often express in terms of a question. They say, we're told that our beliefs and our traditions are backward and primitive, and they're incompatible with us being a part of a modern nation and the global economy. Why is this so? Why can't we have both and? How do we express our culture and identity and make a living while doing so? Traditional cultures all over the world, traditional societies are struggling to maintain their identity. Teresa is a weaver from the island of Timor. She was the last weaver in her community that still made traditional textiles in the traditional way. And she was heartbroken that her culture was going to die with her, until we came along and offered her a market that valued her cultural integrity. Because what this did is it caused other local women to become interested in what she was doing, to join with her. Together they formed a small cooperative that is now revitalizing the textile arts of their community. We see this over and over again. Where there is pride in identity, traditions get passed on from generation to generation. The parents of these children are the members of another cooperative we work with, further to the east on the island of Timor, near the border with the country of TimorLeste. We asked them to host a group from TimorLeste from a village where they are struggling also to maintain their traditions and make a living. The preparations for this visit caused a cultural renaissance in this host community, and the formation of this children's dance and performance group was one of those expressions, and they danced as a welcome to the visitors from the neighboring country. All of these weavers, Katerina, Teresa, the parents of these children, they all live in the same province. And the provincial government has identified the poverty level as being just 70 cents per day. 25% of people live on less than 70 cents per day. 10% of the women are also identified as being weavers, and this is why the government spends lots of time doing livelihood programs based on the traditional textile arts. What they normally do is encourage the weavers, they teach them to take their traditional patterns, to make them bigger, simpler, reorganize them in order that textiles can be made more cheaply for a mass market. RosaBubu, here on the left, was asked to form one such group. What she and the members of that group found was that there was no mass market. They were still producing for the same local market they'd always woven for, still making just 70 cents a day, but this time without their cultural integrity. The group soon fell apart out of disinterest and remained dormant until we came along and were able to offer them a market where they could make at least $3 a day. This needs to be remembered throughout this discussion, that if the economics don't work, the culture will fail. We work with 40 such cooperatives all across Indonesia. And what we found is the key way to working with them is to employ a peer-to-peer process. They are selling traditional textiles, we sell traditional textiles. We sit down and discuss together how best to sell traditional textiles. They are natural dyers. Our field staff have learned to be excellent natural dyers in order that they can have a professional discussion about how to produce good colors. We have a similar kind of discussion with the dye plant farmers. When the communities wanted to establish credit unions in order to circulate the money that they were making within their community, our staff decided that they need to establish a credit union as well, so that it could be shared learning and shared discovery. We find that in order to make this work, we need to internalize whatever problems we're seeking to address. Having one good shared question is more important, has more impact than having 100 well-intentioned answers. To come up with these shared questions, we spend a lot of time sitting and talking to people, listening to people, and drinking lots of very sweet local coffee. Last year, we did a workshop here in Bali in which we invited 40 weavers from 7 islands. And one of the principal themes of the week of discussion was talking about marketing. Weavers are always interested in marketing, but lots of people don't really understand what marketing is. So what we did is we asked the weavers, okay, what are your values? What is it that you express through your work? What do you think the values of our gallery are as your main customer? Compare and contrast these values. Augustina Soli, who is a weaver from the island of Sulawesi, put it beautifully when she said, these values are not the same, but they are connected and they are aligned. This is the kind of moment you dream of as a facilitator, when it feels like everything is falling into place. I said to everyone, okay, great. Your values are values, connected and aligned. Marketing is about asking what the values of the final customer is so that we can fulfill their needs. What do you think their values are? There was a long discussion. The consensus that emerged out of that discussion was they must be buying our textiles because they feel sorry for us. Nothing could be further from the truth. People buy this work because it's beautiful, because it's a work of art, because they want to live with it as a work of art. But I can see where this conclusion comes from. Communities' experience of the outside world is of organizations coming in, helping them, and then leaving. The consequence of that is it convinces people that they're in need of help, that they're helpless to help themselves. What's needed is organizations who come and stay and work together for a shared future. The debate about development focuses almost exclusively on poverty alleviation, and there's no place in it for discussions about culture. The consequence of this is twofold. First, because poverty is elsewhere, it absolves us of the need to thinking about developing ourselves. Second, because we never go any deeper than poverty, we fail to notice that other societies have different values, different aspirations, and very different potential hoped-for outcomes from the development process. Development is not just about not being poor. When I do get a chance to buy a textile from Katerina, she takes us into her clan house, we sit on the floor, and she does a ceremony to ask permission of her ancestors to sell her textile. The central rite of this ceremony is the spinning of a coconut on the floor. The direction in which it points when it stops tells us whether the ancestors agree or disagree. I've seen this ceremony several times, and whatever direction it ends up pointing, Katerina always concludes by saying, "They say yes." I wonder what the textile would have to do in order to say no. I'm really not sure if I ever want to be there if it does say no. But I recognize that the point is simply to have asked permission from the ancestors. Or to put it in our cultural terms, it's to have honored the heritage that we've received and to recognize our responsibility for expressing it. The central prayer of ceremonies like this is like as follows. May I hear you clearly. May I understand you fully. May I act appropriately on what I understand. And may this be for the highest good of all. For me, these are values I want to live my life by. What I've learned from these weavers, I've learned a lot over these last few years. But I still catch myself acting out of the colonial habits of my own heritage. And I still see communities acting out of the colonized habits that they have inherited as well. It's so easy to be the great white hope with all the answers. And communities are far too polite to criticize someone who they've welcomed into their homes as their guest. This is the shadow side of development. This is not often talked about. This is why intangible culture needs to be moved into the heart of the development debate. Poverty is such a big problem that we feel we need to focus on its economic, its environmental, its educational, its health, its governance aspects. We do need to address these issues, but the way we're currently doing so builds a separation between us and the people we're seeking to help. And the unintended consequence of this is it preserves our relative wealth. We need to learn to see through the golden cage of our own sense of privilege and through the cultures of others to the core values that we share. When we can learn to do this, then together we really can make poverty history. Thank you.